Recently, I was at some random location in India, and someone just approached me and say, "Sir, you are the आप वो EV वाले हो ना?" That was my really moment. And I wish there are more of such real moments for us.
Welcome, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce our guest today. He's Maxine Lewis. He is a visionary leader driving India's cutting edge electric mobility ecosystem. With a rich background in automotive, clean energy, and management consulting, he is the founder and managing director of Magenta. Rinko and I welcome him to our Really channel. So we will begin with, if you can provide us an overview of what you do at Magenta, its role in electric mobility ecosystems, and also if you can touch upon the various revenue models that you have across your business lines.
First of all, Anupam and Rinku, thank you so much for hosting me on this show. And I wish you all the best with this initiative. So, I am a mechanical engineer, proud mechanical engineer from Mumbai University. Post that, I have 5 years experience in automotive, 2 years of MBA in operations, and 15 years in electric. Right? So, electric vehicle based logistics, that was a destiny waiting to happen. So, quick journey. My first company was Saint-Gobain, which was into automotive. I was in the abrasive divisions, largely working with automotive companies. And the next company was a German company, Bosch. So, these were the 5 years of the automotive journey. Then MBA from IIM Mumbai. Incidentally, during that time, I did my summers with Wipro. I had the pleasure of working directly with Mr. Azim Premji in the Sarjapur office.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was he was my mentor in the outlook of technology. Post MBA, had multiple offers, and I picked up Accenture, management consulting. Incidentally, mechanical engineer with automotive experience and ops, and I landed up into a conversation where one of my first projects was setting up the billing system for BSES Rajdhani and BSES Mumbai, which was picked up by Mr. Anil Ambani, and that became Reliance Energy. Right? So India's first electricity bill, which came out in 5 languages: English, Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, and Braille. I was part of that journey. Incidentally, my job was to simplify the electricity bills those days.
Very nice.
So did that with a lot of pride. Then I was sent to Canada. I lived part of my life in Canada. Then Singapore, then Australia, then Hong Kong, then came back to India. And in India, that time the electricity generation space was taking off, right? So then from all these great locations, I lived out of Jharsuguda, Lajigad, Korba, Nok, and set up close to 10,000 megawatts of power plants for marquee companies like Vedanta, Tata Power, Punjab State Electricity Board. After that, I again took up a international role. I was hopping between USA and UK. And that was the time when I realized that electricity is the new oil. That time, the only electric vehicle which people Tesla was not even in the fray. It was a Chevy Bolt. And in 2017, after a huge journey of 15 odd years, I left Accenture and set up Magenta. That's my background, and my co-founder is Darryl, who on the back of an SMS left his great journey in Dubai and came back to India. He was convinced about the idea that I had. Now, when we started off Magenta, the interesting piece was there was no business out there. The ecosystem yet to be built. And we had to sustain ourselves, right, as a businessman. So we started to see what is the most aligned business in the electric vehicle space, and we realized solar makes a lot of sense. And let's get our hands dirty while the EV ecosystem is being built. So we did some interesting projects initially. India's first solar-based EV charging station was set up on 13th of June 2018 by Magenta. It's all right. India's first EV highway, Bobby-Pune, we did that. India's first EV billing meter, the green belt, was set up by us, by Magenta. So we were doing all of these great things in the EV space, trying to see what can be done. And at that time, incidentally, Honorable Minister Gadkari, who was talking about his initiatives in the EV space, right? He made a strong point by 2025 everything will be EV. Well, I kind of agreed and disagreed at the same point, but we were invited to present our position at the Move 2018 summit,
Okay.
which was also attended by the Honorable Prime Minister as well. So we did whatever we kind of the work that we did, we kind of presented the challenges, etc.
Right.
Because one of the challenges we were solving was the EV charging.
Right.
We were invited by the Prime Minister's office, I think, fortunately, and we were then seed funded by HPCL, Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Limited.
Very nice.
Right, by invitation. That was way back in 2018, December 2000. So this is how the journey started, really. So one piece was EV charging. And when HPCL came on board, we invested into setting up a lot of R&D, right? Because we are solving, we cannot copy paste international solutions into India, typically for all businesses, but especially for unique businesses which are primary industry drivers in the country. So we decided to invest in R&D and design solutions, processes, business models for India. So one of that was the charger side. So that's what we did. After that, we moved to in the technology space. We were doing a lot of work in the technology space. We designed the entire software for driving the chargers. All of it was built in-house. Right?
So when you say driving the chargers means?
What happens is EV chargers need a software platform to run, right?
Okay.
For someone to download an app for the entire payment gateway to be made.
Understood.
And there's an OCPP platform. It's the Open Charge Point Protocol platform. We were the first company to build that protocol in India and have a software by way of which you could go search where is the charger, whether it is
Understood.
in use, not in use.
Right.
And that was done way back in 2018, 2019. So the tool system, which is the charging piece and the technology piece, set itself very well. And then suddenly COVID hit. Right? And that is the time again we had to put our heads down, and this is the entrepreneurial journey. You hustle and you hustle again and you again, and the biggest hustle was the COVID period, right? And that time we were just building the team, everything was just kind of setting itself up, and COVID struck. So we got down to hand down saying, what will bring us revenue?
Right.
They said again, design, development, consulting, R&D, right? Because charging stations no one were using.
Right.
So we got down to it and we developed some interesting products like street lamp based EV charger,
Nice.
first residential charger software, the residential charger. A lot of these R&D we got to do, and we continue to do business. We continue to sustain. We did a lot of consulting exercise for a lot of OEMs. Right? So we had the charging platform, we had the technology platform, and the revenue driver would have to be mobility. So in 2021, we launched the third business arm, which was mobility. So as of now, what happens is Magenta, where are we? So Magenta has three business arms: mobility, charging, and the technology. So mobility, we now own and operate 1,200 electric cargo vehicles, 3-wheelers and above, out of 10 cities. In fact, we believe we are India's largest EV fleet operator from the cargo segment. Right? This is supported by a charging infrastructure and the charging products. We operate 39 charging depots, which is captive to our own vehicles, and each depot is typically around 40 vehicles can be charged, fully unmanned, security, all of it on the tech platform. And the third is a tech platform which helps us to do the charging, manage the charging, and also vehicles. For example, right outside my office cabin right now, I can tell you where exactly is my vehicle, which direction it is going, which is the simplest part, the GPS. But I can tell you whether the headlights are on, what is the battery SOC, state of charge, what is the temperature in my battery, and hence how far my vehicle go and where exactly is near my. So this is the ecosystem we've been able to build up, and our customers, clients are the who's who in the e-commerce world. We are also doing work in the FMCG sector. So Magenta is actually three different ecosystems coming together and delivering solutions.
But now I think the biggest revenue driver would be the mobility platform, if I'm not wrong.
It was always intended to be. Mobility would always be because that's the driver of charging. That's the driver of
Right. Right.
So yes, it is, and we are poised to have end financial year this financial year with close to more than 2,500 vehicles on our platform.
Also, you have a partnership with Mahindra and Mahindra for their vehicle.
So we have partnership with a couple of OEMs. In fact, we co-develop or we've helped co-develop some of the vehicles, electric vehicles. Right now, in fact, at Magenta office, you'll always find some new electric vehicle who have given to us for testing. So we do have partnership with the likes of Mahindra, Euler, Altigreen, Exponent. These are few OEMs and product partners with whom we work to improve the electric vehicle products as well. While we are the consumers, but we work with them, give them feedback as well.
Take us through a little bit into the charging infrastructure, right? There's a need for fast and convenient charging, especially in the EV industry. So, how does Magenta bring that innovation and bring to
Sure.
life your product?
So Magenta still, fortunately for us, is known for the pioneering work in the EV charging space, right? Having done India's first, I mean, close to around 8 of India's first have been done by Magenta in the EV charging space. What we realized is there are multiple facets to EV charging. There is public charging, which is when you use it on the highway. Okay, there are essentially four facets to charging. One is called as the home destination charging, which is at your homes and offices,
Right.
right? Which is typically globally 60% of charging happens at homes or offices. The second is highway charging or en route charging, which is because you're traveling. That's all. The third aspect is fleet charging, right? Which not many people know, but that is the highest aspect of charging that way. And the fourth we call it as crisis charging, because then a vehicle for charging comes to you, right? So these are the four facets of charging. What we have, and each of them is very unique. What you require as homes and offices, and homes really is community charging. The public charging is more fast charging, DC charging. It's a more of an infrastructure game. It's more of a location game. Fleet charging is more of a utilization, lowest cost, highest output, move out. That's the plan. And the fourth one, which is essentially it's going to evolve, I would believe. It's still in its nascency. Magenta was working across the three charging platforms. One is we were in residential charging. India's first community charger was installed by us. We were in public charging. We were in fleet charging. Right now, what we have done is Magenta has solutions around it, but we have decided to focus on only one aspect, which at this point now is fleet charging.
Okay.
And interestingly, what is happening over there is we would want to provide fleet charging to others, but my own captive consumption is so high that I'm unable to provide this as a service to others. Riku, to your question, many people think of charging as the bigger problem as public charging on the highways, but that's not the bigger problem to solve. That's a bigger visual problem to solve. The real problem is home and office charging. Suddenly, each of you will have, because in India, if you see, not everyone, leave aside charging, not everyone has his own parking slot. So where would you go for dedicated charging? So I think those are some problem statements that need to be solved, and it has to be solved at multiple levels. It's electricity, it's infrastructure, it's business, cooperative housing societies, it's roads,
Space.
all of these things need to come together. And I think India has done some brilliant work, but a lot more needs to be done in that space.
So in this, the charging, the main source is electricity only, or the solar powered electricity is the main source?
So at this point in time, it is electricity from the grid. And in India, fortunately, the grid is also becoming greener. More solar is coming. But if you were to say dedicated solar at my charging hub, like it, we were India's first solar-based EV charging station. Most of our charging stations does have solar, but it does not make economic sense, because already the charger is heavy on captive cost, infrastructure cost. And then solar has an issue is that's the interesting part, right? Because we done solar projects also.
Right.
We can technically tell you that for charging infrastructure, solar requires 100% open skies. And typically charging station are ground based. So there are so many complexities. So I wouldn't want to commit to saying every charging station is solar possible, but wherever possible, we should put solar.
Yes,
Sorry,
Nico.
before we move on, in terms of the demand between home and residential versus commercial fleet based, where is the market bigger?
Okay. State numbers, the number of vehicles, four-wheelers, which Rinku or Anupam or Maxine would buy, is close to around right now, what, about 10,000 vehicles per month, right? Two-wheelers, but the fleet vehicles is much higher, much higher. So, but so the fleet charging is a bigger business opportunity right now. But as we progress, the residential charging will be a much bigger business opportunity because as more and more people buy into electric vehicles. So that's
Understood.
where.
Got it.
So I had a question related to Atmanirbhar Bharat or manufacturing prowess of EV infrastructure. So compared to the likes of China, and so where does you see that, or if you can share some insights on Magenta's approach to the manufacturing? So
So, like I said, the fact that I believe that you cannot cut copy paste solutions into India. However, first let me give a macro view of the EV space. More often than not, the major components of EV, one of them is battery, right? Now, break it down into battery cells. From battery pack to battery cells. The largest manufacturer of battery cells in the world is China. Right? There are other companies coming through, but they have reached that maturity and scale. So inadvertently, we are dependent on China from the battery cells perspective. We may source it or resource it from somewhere else, but effectively, that's where. Second is also the permanent magnets and other components. Third is in the charging space, the rectifiers is largely a China story. So while we may want to wish it away, I want to be upfront that no, there is a huge component of which comes from outside. Now, we took an approach that for us, we are not into DC chargers, but we are into AC chargers. And even AC chargers, leave aside the chargers, vehicles used to come in knockdown kits, come to India somewhere, someone used to just put it together. And the made in sticker was also made in China. Made in India sticker was made in China.
Very
In
good.
chargers also the same thing was happening, even the branded. So we decided that we will want to invest into setting up the R&D. We have a huge R&D facility, and all the entire design development happened in-house. Right. So at a component level, we are what I would say made in India. We take pride in it. But at a sub-component level, there is an element of imports which has to be there. And I will not, it will be untruthful on my side to say, no, we are 100%. And it is true, it's a global economy. But the entire design, development, component assembly, etc., all happens in-house for us at the charger level. And that I think that strength has allowed us to kind of also come up with some unique solutions. For example, all our chargers have something called as FOTA, FOTA, which is firmware upgrade over the air. So we have supplied 1,000 chargers to HPCL, to be honest, and all of them are centrally. You can control them and upgrade them also. So these are possible because the entire design was done.
understood.
But from an ecosystem perspective, I think we have a long way before we get into 100% Atmanirbhar Bharat kind of the EV space, and we should be open and honest about this conversation. That's my view.
Understood. So I have, since you touched upon batteries, and so this is a more common layman person question, which is we have seen incidences where the batteries is caught in fire, and there are instances where which is deterring a lot of people to adopt EVs, right? So are there any safety advancements that are being made to build confidence in the EV adoption?
Sure. So the fires really, this was an often spoken topic couple of months ago. Right now, it is kind of moved on, and there was a spate of fire. So I think there are challenges coming two parts. One is the quality of battery. Second is the quality of charging. Magenta decided to focus on the quality of charging, and hence we don't use the three-pin sockets. We use something called the IEC 60309 platform, which is the industrial sockets. But most of the fires were across 50%. If you were to see, really, it was less of battery and more of charging. And if you were to, so if you see, it was called as EV fire, but really, if you see the media articles, it was said EV fire. But if you read down, it was typically EV charging fire. Someone has put his charger at home, charging at home, and the wires were not. But now let's address. So the first part is the charging part is absolutely addressable and should be addressed. On the battery side, what was happening is many people in India, just to cut down costs, the initial, there was a lack of quality consciousness. And to cut down on cost, many of the vehicles had something called as passive cooling, not active cooling.
Hmm.
What it means is in battery, it's a simple concept, right? You're converting electrical energy into chemical energy and storing it. And during the transformation process, a lot of heat was getting
Heat.
generated.
Right.
You have two ways of cooling it. You can say, okay, battery, you can cool out by yourself and provide some passive cooling. Or you can do active cooling in which you track what is the heat temperature and you use something called as a BMS or a battery management system to manage the charging. But what was happening, there was a lot of compromise. So you would have seen a lot of spate of those fire incidents. Right? But hand on heart, and the fact, and I don't want to say it just because I have bet my entire life and money and profession on an EV ecosystem,
Hmm.
but genuinely I feel that EVs are safer, right? Think about it from a different perspective. I mean, if you would have written a motorbike or a scooter, I mean, to carry a 15 liter petrol tank between your legs as compared to a battery somewhere. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, but just that we've allowed 100 years of ecosystem play to make it safer, etc. So EVs are as safe, batteries are as safe, just that if quality is not compromised.
Understood.
And
So today there are batteries, you can just pierce the batteries and make a hole through and they don't burn. Because all of this can be managed. But allow the ecosystem to grow.
EVs actually were positioned as a more sustainable alternative to some of the existing fuels, right? But what makes me wonder is with EVs coming into foreground, is there a question of usage and disposal of batteries itself? So are we like creating another problem with it, which was initially a solution to an older problem?
Great question. And I'll start with my position. Any human intervention is non-sustainable, right? The most
Interesting.
sustainable thing is you just move humans out of the entire ecosystem and this is the most sustainable. Any human interaction to nature is unsustainable in some format or other. The question is how much of an impact, negative impact, that we can contain. Now, I'll address this in across all three: manufacture, operate, dispose of the EV. Right? So, into the first part of it is the manufacturing side of it. Purely from a manufacturing perspective, like to like manufacturing of an EV is equal to or lesser polluting than a ICE vehicle.
Okay.
Right? Very clear. Because first thing is there are lesser parts. There's a lesser manufacturing. The most intense manufacturing is the motor and the everything else. So as you know, 20,000 parts versus 2,000 parts, roughly. So
Right.
that's on the, and there are some studies happening on that side of it as well. But like even if nothing, it is equally bad. Let's accept it and state it out there. Now come to operating electricity, right? Now electricity is either you can use fossil fuel or solar. But as compared to that, an oil versus a electricity, in electricity, I have the option to make it cleaner using solar.
Okay.
Right? In oil, I don't have any option. I have to be as dirty as it ever can be. Now, coming to disposal. Now, this is where the interesting part. Disposal, ICE vehicle, there is a huge amount of reusability. It's metal, it's all of that. Right? So there's a huge amount of reuse that it can be put to. In electric vehicle, the battery disposal is currently a big problem, and I will not shy from it. In fact, I'm personally invested in companies who are trying to solve this problem. The recoverability, unknown to many, Riku, this is an interesting data point. The most reused component in globally is actually a lead acid battery,
Is it?
right? It's one of the most recovered because so this is a very interesting fact which I also, when I was doing my study in NITI, I had done I kind of was doing a project called as Project Phoenix,
Hmm.
it was
Okay.
recycling. And that time I realized it. But my point to you is lead acid batteries have got a huge recycling component. The lithium ion batteries still don't have a huge recycling because it's more chemically integrated. But the solutions are coming through. There are three types of recycling options that are coming through. There are companies invested into it. But I would believe that a year, 2 years at least, you'll get a lot of business positive recycling ecosystems falling in place. But that's one. Second, I think the battery technologies themselves are also improving. I know of companies which are building recyclable batteries from the ground up itself. But so Rinku, yes, at this point in time, it is a problem which is growing. But I'm expecting that by the next, while there, now there's another issue also, where those guys who are trying to come up with the solutions don't have enough batteries to recycle,
Okay.
right? So it's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
chicken egg at everyone. So as the number of electric vehicles grow, the problem will grow, the solution will also come through.
Okay.
So the
So the
solutions
work
will
is
come.
happening. Work is
Yeah,
happening already.
it is not like some components which cannot be disposed of. Electronic waste, for that matter. I mean, it's difficult to. But batteries, if you were to talk about it, there's some great work happening in that space.
Okay.
So, but I don't want to call it out and say we have a solution. It is a problem statement.
Got it. Got it. And what about some of the future alternatives to EV themselves? So there's also a perception that EVs could be a short-lived trend, right? And there could be alternatives like hydrogen fuel cells picking up and replacing EVs altogether. What's your take on that? Like, where does this industry stand in the future?
Again, eye opener. EVs, right? EV stands for electric vehicles. So there is nothing called as a hydrogen vehicle. It is a hydrogen electric vehicle. Why? A fuel cell FCEV.
Hmm.
Okay, so all that you're doing is the source of electricity is either coming from the grid or from that hydrogen through the fuel cell. But effectively, even those are electric vehicles,
Okay.
right? So conceptually, hydrogen is used to generate electricity. Electricity will be driving the motor. So EVs is here to stay at a broad level. Now it is BEV, which is battery electric vehicle, hydrogen electric vehicle, FCEV. So this not many people realize or understand this, right? But now let me come to address. I understood your question, so now I'll address the question. Electric vehicles, as the battery capacity, battery technology is improving, will move from last mile, range will also increase, right? Uh, hydrogen electric vehicles also serve a purpose,
Okay.
which will be for long hauls. Why? Because the form factors there is huge. You need storage, etc. And I keep a track of it. Unfortunately, in hydrogen, what's happening is the technology solutions are yet to come in space, and whatever new pilots have happened, they have not given very positive results,
Hmm.
right? But I would still want to give it a chance. I believe that there will be, like you have petrol and diesel, you would have BEV, HEV, and I think
Hmm.
that's the right story to.
So they may coexist
They
as
will,
per.
but only the use cases will be different. Probably, in my view, you and I will be driving a BEV, battery electric vehicle, but our trucking systems could be on the long hauls would be on hydrogen electric vehicles. But
But
whichever way it is electric vehicles.
but what about then biofuels? Because there is a lot of thrust by Nitin Gadkari himself about biofuels, use of ethanol, and he claims that ethanol will become the new oil, and India will become the source or a hub like Dubai or Middle East. So
Correct. So I'm all game for it. All that I'm saying is ethanol and other fuel systems are a replacement to oil, right? They are a replacement to the supply side, not a replacement to the exhaust side.
so are you saying that even those will be used as a fuel to charge electric vehicles and then can be
No, even if it is used in an ICE vehicle, what are you doing? You're replacing a petrol diesel with a biodiesel.
right?
What you're doing is your production side you're changing, which means instead of importing diesel, you are making diesel through other sources, but you're making diesel. And you are using internal combustion engines to split up the atoms, and then you are creating carbon in any form. Carbon will get created. So,
Understood.
it is not greener in the exhaust side, it is greener only on the
Produce side.
production side. But
Understood.
still, whichever way it is, if like I said, right, if
Impact is
mankind,
minimizing.
negative impact is minimized, I'm game for it. And I
So
hope and pray that this becomes a lot more sustainable. Yeah.
yeah, so I think now is a very right time since we speak about future. So if you can also share Magenta's upcoming electric mobility projects and some innovations for safer and smarter ecosystem that you're focusing on, maybe a span of next 2 to 3 years. What are your
So
plans?
great. So yes, Magenta is growing fast. I wish I had more hands, more hours. That's how it is. But let me give you a view of the future. So in the mobility platform, right now we are doing, so I'll give it across all three platforms. So mobility, like I told you, we intend to go from 1,200 vehicles to 2,500 vehicles by this financial year. And by next calendar year, so December 24, we should have at least 10,000 vehicles on our platform, right, across multiple cities. And so next year, this year and next year is focused on growth in the India story on the mobility platform, but grow there. On the charger side of it, we have two interesting launches. We launched a product called as a Plent, which is a short form for Plenty, is to reduce the cost of charger itself. So 12 chargers in one. Right?
Mm.
So those are some interesting R&D and projects that we're doing. We're also working on a very interesting project which is called as the open access system, which means all our charging stations, instead of having solar at the space, we will be buying energy from the central grid using 100% solar. So that's an interesting project that we are doing. And on the technology side is where I think is the big game for us. We are developing technology for the international markets right now, which is like I said, the tracking of the vehicles, battery, temperatures, etc. is something for fleet management. This solution we are going to go international with. So these are the three different pieces, this is just a 1 to 2 year span, immediate span that I'm telling you. From a If you were to look at it from a 5 year, so I have this 2 year story, 5 year story. That's how I. So 2 year, I can tell you with 100% guarantee that it's done, dusted, it will happen. From a 5 year perspective, we will get into new projects, both from a geography perspective, but I also think the technology is going to improve and speed up fast. That time, don't be surprised if you will see Magenta long haul trucks running around the country as well.
Very nice. Coming to one interesting question, basically it's about hardware, EV and hardware. So yours, your entire startup is more about, if I can, but yeah. So it is also linked with hardware, a lot of hardware. And generally, hardware startups are very difficult to get funding, is what we hear and we see as in the market as compared to software ones. So in terms of growth aspects, or if you can tell us about the investors, how was your rounds with investors, how easy was it to convince them, at the same time what are their some of the metrics that they use to try, see the returns and growth in contrast to probably a much easier funded software industry.
Sure. Interestingly, yes. Software is like water, right? You can move, you can quickly change, etc. And hence, funding for software companies or for software-related startups is always easier. No shying away from it. But the more sustainable ones are always the ones which are brick and mortar based models, right? Which is what I think. So how has been our journey from a fundraise perspective? Because that before that, we take a lot of pride in the fact that we have raised more revenue than funds. Because I think world has also changed. They've started to realize value over valuation. But
Right.
that's a very interesting journey, and I want to talk about it. Fortunately, we've never had issues generating reaching out to investors. And I'll start from the journey. First one was HPCL. It was by invitation, but post invitation, we had to make a pitch. Our pitch was 5 minutes. That's it, and we were told, interestingly, the investment of HPCL happened on the promoters because there was nothing to judge by. Right, EV ecosystem was not there. So all that they did is they asked me to introduce my co-founder to introduce me, and we were able to introduce each other's birthdays, houses, kids, everything. It was today. They said, "Boss, we are sure about." So that was the HPCL story, and it continues to be a brilliant story and brilliant partner. Post that was Jito and Let's Venture, and that was just outside of COVID. We were just coming out of COVID, and that was the time. And I think we had some amazing conversations there. And there we were. It was not about the hardware. The company, investment company like Jito and Let's Venture, what is the value you've been able to create? Right? Interestingly, ours is a hardware come software plus services, all three. What helped us was the fact that we were pioneers in this space. And we were able to tell the investors that don't invest here because that is the wrong thesis. The correct thesis is here. Right? So that was important. Now, interestingly, now the recent fundraisers by Morgan Stanley and BT, which was all over the news. interesting. My biggest problem today is to tell no to a lot of investors. Now, all these companies who have invested in us have invested on the back of a sustained revenue, not an immediate spike. So it's about what is the kind of investor. We have been a bit selective about the investors. I'm being very upfront about it. We have been selective about the investors. We wanted to work with investors who had that patience to be working in with a company which will provide you growth for sure. But we were upfront about it. And I think all the investors that we have had always been has accepted it. So you have to understand the investor's thesis first. Not there are investors who will invest only in software. There are investors who will invest only. There are investors who will only invest in assets, asset heavy company. You have to identify that and won't be selective. And unfortunately for us, one good investor led to another. And if someone is out there in the entrepreneur world, be as selective as your investor, as selective as you are about your co-founder or your partner. Right? One wrong move and it can go bad. But fortunately for us, it has been a brilliant journey.
Coming a little bit to your personal growth story as an entrepreneur, it's been 6 years, I think, now to Magenta, right? And you have a huge history in the entire industry for the past 15 years as well. So, what has been your top learnings through this entire journey, if you can share with us?
Oh, great. You're putting me on a spot because. Okay, so I think first is from an entrepreneur, and I'll be very upfront. Don't wait to start your entrepreneurship journey. I wish I had started it 15 years ago. I wish I had started because by now I think I could have made something bigger. But everything has a good time. But entrepreneurship journey, one thing, there's never going to be the right time for it. Right. Second learning is jump into it, learn from your failures and move out very fast. Don't allow your failures to linger. We have done those mistakes. Right? There are unicorns within 2 years, 3 years, or wherever they are right now, good, bad, ugly. That's a different. But we have been a bit more steady. But we have done our mistakes also, and we stuck to chalega. Let's stretch it out a bit. Don't do that. Learn, move ahead, and don't wait for the right 100% right software, right hardware. It will never come. Get to the market soon. Test the market. Third important point, there is no better learning space than your customers. You can have you can say I have the best jazziest software, best app, best MVP, best solution. One conversation with your client or clients is enough to tell you where exactly you are going to land. And fourth and most important for me is invest in the right people. Right? As an entrepreneur, you have to cover so many things, and this is what has been my problem. My learning is I used to do everything. Today I do very limited, but I have the professionals, the right professionals to handle that aspect of business. I wish I had learned that. So if there is that every dollar to be spent, uh, spend it on your building, getting a better person fit for the job, than to say let me save some money out here. So that's an amazing learning for me. So these are the three, four things I think I can rattle out, and I
Wonderful.
hope I don't sound like a philosopher.
I put you on the spot, but I think you did full justice to that question. Amazing learning. So, since the three of us also share IIM Mumbai as our common alma mater, right? One question that we like to ask everyone on our really show is, how has the alma mater education, right? NITI's foundation, NITI's network, IIM Mumbai's network now, helped you in your journey?
It was my inflection point in my professional life. NITI was. And my background to that was at NITI, and now I am. Interestingly, I had offers, final offers from other IIMs also at that point in time. I chose NITI over for a couple of reasons because that's what I wanted to do. And my journey in NITI has been very interesting. One, for the fact that I found some great friends. NITI was that safe environment to do all the mistakes that you want to do. And the best part was at NITI, I used to pick up subjects and go. It was an absolutely unrelated subject. Took the time to, NITI allowed you to take a time to go deep into it. I'll tell you, I wrote a lot of papers, but I had a lot of research papers written when I was in NITI that time. Now I have, but those are published research papers. That was possible at NITI. Third point is my summers. I mean, that opportunity that NITI gave me to be at Wipro and amazing learning. I think these are a couple of things. I don't think there are very few B schools in India which provide that.
So I know we are almost up the time, but one last question from our side is your message to entrepreneurs who are specifically looking to make it big in this industry, right? Sustainability, and this entire industry. Any message that comes to your mind?
So, okay, while this may sound like a bummer, but the color of green and green electricity, green energy, green is only possible if you back it up with other green, which is the commercial green. So, any business idea which is sustainable but not sustainable economically will always have a problem. Right? So, whatever ideas that you have, green ideas, make it green in the economic side as well. I think otherwise, what happens is there's a lot of heartburn. And there are ways and means. If brilliant ideas can be made economically viable. For someone to make agarbattis out of waste flowers, perfume flowers, I mean, this is a brilliant idea. So these are the things I would say everyone in the EV space, many times people jump just because it is sustainable. That's not the right way. Business, on entrepreneurship, a business is the job of a business is to make money, right? And if you move away from that basic ethos, will be difficult. Your principles could be around clean energy, sustainability, but your business is around making money. But don't move. That would be my one single line. I think.
Anything that you feel is a really moment for you, which you want to share, or you have not shared with anyone?
Yeah, I have not shared a lot of things with anyone. I've somehow opened up quite a bit over here. But yeah, interestingly, I did not realize this of the impact that Magenta has created or I have been able to create. But recently, I was at some random location in India, and someone just approached me and say, "Sir, you are आप वो EV वाले हो ना?" तो I said, "उसका मतलब क्या है?" नहीं वो आप बोल, बोलते रहते हो. So essentially, what it meant is someone. I mean, I didn't realize that Magenta has been able to create that impact, right? For whatever limited way, there are bigger companies than us, but for someone in some very remote location to know that the work that we're doing, that was my really moment. And I wish there are more of such real moments for us all actually.
Thank you so much. And I think the choice of your color is also very nice, very apt, because it stands out and it's very beautiful as we see, and wherever we see, we get inspiration. So thank you so
And
much.
there's a story around that too.
Okay, please, if you have time, why not?
Oh, yes. So, quick one. When we were setting up the name of the company, everyone was talking about green, right? Green rays, green power, green this, green that. Uh, Typical engineers, right? Technologists. So, we decided to analyze the spectrum of light.
Uh,
We realized that magenta, by the way, is incidentally a non-spectral color, right? It's a non-spectral color. It's not in the spectrum, right? And it is the most complementary color to green. So if you see a bougainvillea plant, it's the magenta over the green leaves. So magenta is the most complementary color. So we are magenta, we help you go green.